Happy Tuesday, everyone. I'm Jeff Marks, standing on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange live with Jim Cramer. Jim, we got markets hitting new all-time highs today. Interesting day. We're seeing a lot of categories of stocks are up today. What do you think's driving the action?
Well, I think that there's a belief that first there's a Cathie Wood belief. She finally had money coming in. That's a big thing to watch because she likes a lot of the highest multiple growth. There's a lot of research today about the industrials, that it's time to buy Emerson, that it's time to buy Textron, that you should be thinking about GE. And then there's also comments positive about the rail, CSX, positive comment about Micron and SKYWORKS. Research is driving some positives. That said, I think the market's going to be a little stuck because I tend to think that this is a market driven by large cap tech, and large cap tech is got to rest. I mean, it's just really had such a run.
A little bit of a doldrums heading into a holiday weekend.
Yeah, I think, look, it's historically been a decent time, and I think it's going to stay a decent time. I like, there's a Micron reports tomorrow night, and SKYWORKS positive comment today. I continue to like our semi positions for action alerts.
Yeah, NVIDIA, Marvell. I don't want to give them all away.
Right, broad.
A couple of the big ones right
yes,
there.
Yes, and I think that those are the place to be. It's funny because just a few weeks ago, you had to be in other stocks, and we were buying these, and I kept thinking, okay, did we make a mistake? But the answer was no. The market rotated back into our group. We can talk about that on our action alert video. But I feel that you have to be very cognizant. These are rapid rotations, and don't get caught up in the idea that you can catch them. They're too hard.
Okay, so you mentioned Cathie Wood earlier, saw some inflows back into the Cathie Wood stocks. Now, we may be seeing more inflows into ARK in the future because she just filed with the SEC to create a Bitcoin ETF. Now, is this just another huge moment for ARK, huge moment for Bitcoin? What do you think of the news?
I think Bitcoin is incredibly important. I mean, yesterday I had Etsy on, okay, and is Etsy going to take crypto? I think Josh Silverman, he's a crypto believer.
He said on your show he's been a holder for a long time now.
And I think it's only a matter of time. I think it'll be Ethereum. That's what people are using to buy regular stuff. I want to watch this Tether. That's what I've been worried about because I don't know really their commercial paper, what do they really have in it. But I've been buying Ethereum consistently on every dip because I think Ethereum, unlike Bitcoin, is the one that is most likely to be accepted when you go buy things.
Right. I used to dabble a little bit with NBA Top Shot, and that's where you would go. Ethereum was the currency of choice there, so that makes sense.
It's fun for me. I had a nice hit in Bitcoin. I don't want to minimize these things. They matter tremendously, but the flows are very hard to gauge. And you technically, when Bitcoin held that 30,000 level, although some people intraday say it went to 29, that was a clarion call for people to buy it. But that's not a currency. We're not sitting there. I mean, I noticed, for instance, that the peso has gotten stronger of late. It went from 20 to 1 to 19.3 to 1. Now that's a currency. And if you think Mexico's a failed state, you don't want to buy the peso. But I've been noticing the peso doing better. And I think a lot of it is that Trump was very anti-Mexico, and Biden hasn't really talked about Mexico. So maybe the peso goes to 18 to 1, something to think about.
All right, so we hit on some currencies, some of the fast-growing names. Let's talk about an old-school industrial. United Airlines, huge announcement out this morning, an order of 270 narrow-body jets. This is the largest U.S. order from a U.S. airline since 2011. 200 of those planes are going to be Boeing. Scott Kirby was on TV this morning talking all about the plan. Do you think United Airlines, can they handle this capacity, or is this more about the resurgence of the economy?
I think it's the resurgence of the economy and the demand for travel. People have been pent up. A lot of the routes just need more planes, the route to Florida, the routes to California. Maybe the international comes back. These tend to be the narrow bodies. That's not international. What I like about this, from our point of view of Action Alerts, is that Boeing has been terrible, and I'd love to talk about Boeing in our AAP video. This is not going to counteract the bad news of Boeing this quarter. So don't buy, I'm going to reiterate, don't buy Boeing on this yet. They still have a lot of work to do.
So patience is still needed. So we hit the high growth stocks earlier, went into industrial. Now this all ties nicely back to the segment you had yesterday on Mad Money. You talked about coolness per share, uncoolness per share. Coolness per share being fintechs like PayPal, electric vehicles, anything tied to digitization, e-commerce, Etsy. What is coolness per share? Can you define it a little bit?
I mean, I just think that there are people, there are younger buyers, the Robinhood types. And because the market's very thin, when they come in, they can move stocks. I think that people have to understand there's a new game in town. If you use undisciplined market orders and they're all batched together, then you're like one big hedge fund moving stocks. And they like stocks that are tangibly fun. They like to take their stimulus money and buy maybe an Etsy or buy a Facebook, and they're to be reckoned with. Now, they have never been reckoned with because they've never had any buying power. But if you have 20 million Robinhoods, you got 10 million people on Reddit, you have all these people on E-Trade with Morgan Stanley, next thing you know is you got power. And they are not going to buy the stock of Ingersoll Rand. They're just not. They'll buy Facebook. They'll buy Alphabet. They'll buy Facebook off yesterday Facebook was up huge off the FTC, the victory.
We're going to hit on that.
Yeah, and what I would say is, well, that's young people just going in there and just buying and buying and buying. I don't think it's institutions. So we have to reckon the fact that younger people love the stock market. I think it's great. I get a lot of younger people watching Mad Money. Younger people are in, and they like it, and they like it more than a CD.
Now, it would take a lot of people together to really move the stock on Apple, just because it's given its size. So maybe that's why Barclays suggests today it's time to buy the Apple suppliers instead. And one of the stocks you called out on Squawk this morning was SKYWORKS.
Yes.
Why do you like SKYWORKS?
Well, SKYWORKS made an acquisition that killed the stock, which was wrong because it's trying to diversify away from just being cell phone. But if you think that Apple is going to do well, that means they have a ton of SKYWORKS in there. Now, a lot of this is very difficult for people who have never traded SKYWORKS because they can't come out and say Apple is a big customer because Apple will not let them. Apple's the only company that forbids you from mentioning them. If you do mention them, you'll lose their business. So you're not going to get a statement saying that they're getting a lot of orders for the new Apple iPhone. But that note was about that.
Yeah, for Action Alerts Plus, we report on the Broadcom quarter every single time, and there's always one analyst who always tries to fit in a question about their relationship with Apple, and Hock-Tan, he always shuts them down immediately, saying, look, we can't really divulge too much about our customers beyond maybe some of the existing contracts they have in place.
I've run afoul, many, many years ago when I first started Mad Money, there was a company, I won't mention it, they were crushed. And they were crushed because Apple had cut back orders. And I had them on, and I said, well, why? And it should have been up to me to say, look, I understand you have a very large customer, and that's how they phrased it. But you should understand that you're never going to hear from SKYWORKS, wow, did we get a big order from Apple? But that may be what's happening.
Yeah, you've always taught me it's the Fight Club rule, right? What's rule number one?
You can't talk about the Fight Club.
Can't talk, right, exactly. All right, so moving on, we had a lot of capital return announcements last evening from the banks. This comes after last week's CCAR announcements where the Fed released the stress test results and all the banks passed. Capital returns, though, are generally positive.
Right.
Major Stanley, I would say, is the standout today. Double the dividend, plus a huge buyback, $12 billion over the next 4 quarters.
Gorman just bought a major company, E-Trade. Gorman has been buying companies that position his company as being, when you first get your first million, you're going to use them. When you first get your first 1,000, you're going to use them. They remind me of Fidelity years and years and years ago, where they just decided, listen, we're going to be the greatest asset gatherer of our time. They will be the greatest asset gatherer of our time because Gorman doesn't want any parts. Obviously, he's got investment banking, right? Obviously, he's got trading. But he wants to own your account. And look at how much he's rewarded you as a shareholder. I know that we own Wells. We'll talk about that in the video. But Morgan may have to go in the damn, it may have to go in the bullpen. Maybe we have a big shelling, and maybe Morgan is the one that we buy because they'll be in there buying themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if you look at that dividend raise, the implied yield is going to be 3.2%, which is pretty attractive when you consider all that growth as well that Morgan Stanley is doing based off the initiatives that you just talked about.
I just think that Gorman's doing a great job. I love the fact, of course, Gorman says you got to come to work. He's not fooling around. You know, it's none of this like, hey, take off Monday, take off Friday. And for people who think that these people are being hard asses, remember what they're trying to do is make decisions about whether you should move up. And it's very difficult to move up if you're not known by your boss.
All right, before we wrap the show today, let's talk about the newest $1 trillion market cap club member. That's Facebook, Action Alerts Plus name. Big news yesterday, federal judge dismissed an antitrust complaint against the company. Now, that saved the majority of the comments for Action Alerts Plus, but let's just get your general take on Facebook.
It's going to be very hard for any government to prove any real damage, and very hard to remedy that damage. But that does not mean that the new FTC commissioner won't go right back at him.
Yeah, I mean, and just real quick, it's interesting when you, especially, look, a lot of concerns about antitrust right now with Facebook, but look what Twitter's doing. Look at the market cap. Look how well Snap and Pinterest are doing. TikTok, which doesn't even, we don't get to truly see because it's not public.
I mean, you know, one of the things that the judge said is that there's plenty of avenues, you know, and they're not trying to restrain you from being on Twitter. They're just not. The judge basically made it said, guys, you're pathetic. FTC, you're pathetic. And they were pathetic.
All right, well, let's save the rest of the commentary for the Action Alerts Plus show. I'm Jeff Marks. We're going to go right to the Action Alerts Plus Daily Rundown right after this. We'll see you tomorrow.